So the world is in disarray because our president is a senile puppet who cowers to the green hairs and terror activists who hate America. You know, I could really go for some mean tweets and world peace right about now. How about y'all? The show starts now. Despite everything the Fed has been trying, we are still feeling the effects of inflation. Filling up your car, grocery shopping, home repairs, everything is more expensive. And most of you are paying these bills with a credit card. Credit card debt is at an all-time high. If you're a homeowner, there is a way out. You need to call my friends at American Financing. They can put together a plan to pay off that high-interest credit card debt and create meaningful savings for you every month. They are saving people just like you an average of $854 a month and closing in as fast as 10 days. So don't wait. Get yourself into a better position. Call their salary-based mortgage consultants today. It costs nothing to get started. And if you start today, you could delay 2 mortgage payments, giving you greater savings up front. American Financing can help get that monkey off your back. 866-890-8585. That's 866-890-8585 or visit AmericanFinancing.net. Well, Joe Biden had to cut his beach weekend short after Iran didn't heed his slurred one-word warning of don't and fired missiles from Iran into Israel. It was unprecedented, which, aside from dumpster and fire, seems to be the one word we can use to describe this entire administration. Unprecedented crime, inflation, illegal immigration, and now this. Oh, and speaking of illegal immigration, as we inch closer to World War III, I, for one, am just super comforted that we've had an open border free-for-all for over 3.5 years. 10 million illegals and 2 million known gotaways, but I'm sure none of them want to hurt and kill us. But I don't think Joe cares either way. Just keep in mind that there are people, many of whom are likely non-citizens, sitting in Michigan happily chanting death to America and death to Israel. And our president takes his foreign policy directives from those people and their allies, the Queers for Palestine. Feeling safe? Me either. So let's just cut all the BS and the talking points and be honest. The world was a better and more peaceful place with Donald Trump in charge, and that's just a cold, hard fact. Democrats know it too. Our current guy is weak in every sense of the word. Physically, mentally, policy-wise, weak, weaker, weakest. Speaking of weakness, as we stare down the barrel of World War III, so glad our military has been focusing on the importance of DEI and pronouns. Comforting. And should we face a draft, good to know our young people are ready to take on the latest TikTok challenge, but are terrified of human interaction and working after 5 p.m. It's all gone to hell in a handbasket under this president, and none of it is surprising. Literally, none of it. Joining me now is editor-in-chief of the Foreign Desk, Lisa Daftari. So, Lisa, I just want to jump right in. Obviously, the world is in disarray. You've got mixed messages coming from the White House saying that they have an ironclad support for Israel, but also saying, hey, you know what? Since Iran wasn't able to successfully kill you, maybe you should take that as a victory and you should show some restraint. So I have to ask you your thoughts coming from this administration's response and what you think Israel should do next if it wants to protect and defend its very existence.
Right, absolutely. And I think Israel has already decided that they will be delivering some sort of response. What they haven't agreed on yet is the timing of that and the nature of that response. Now, what the White House should not do, and I've said this since October 7th, is micromanage Israel's war. Israel is in the business 24/7 of defending an existential threat, multiple existential threats surrounding it. So right now, we're asking Israel to basically be punished for its technology. Israel has 3 levels of technology. They have the Iron Dome, they have David Sling, and they have the Arrow. They need 3 layers of technology to just protect its airspace. That's how dire their national security and the existential threats that surround it are. That's how serious this threat is. So now we're asking Israel, well, because you have this technology, you have to see this as a victory and not respond the way any other nation would respond to such a threat. 300 missiles and drones coming into the country. That was not meant as just a symbolic hit. It was meant to cause casualties. It was meant as a serious hit towards Israel.
Right. Well, and I also, obviously all we can do is speculate, but I know that you're obviously an expert in this, follow it very closely, and you've been following since October 7th the dialogue that's been happening in this country and around the world in regards to our current president and the current administration. Do you see any correlation between this president's kind of criticism of Israel, his courting of the American Muslim population in Michigan, and Iran deciding that they were going to make this unprecedented move? Obviously, it's not directly related, but do you see here maybe picking up on tidbits of that Iran looked at our president and how badly he wants that vote and thought, boy, if there was a time that we were going to strike and show a show of force, it would be when the president is trying to get votes?
Look, there's definitely a posture here that Iran's regime is watching. And it's not just since October 7th. You can rewind back to when Joe Biden was running for office. And he said, I'm going to get back into the Iran nuclear deal. And there was no contingencies. There was no conditions. He was going to remove sanctions. He was going to appease them. He took the Houthis off the list. He gave them billions of dollars back in waivers and such, lopsided hostage deal that gave them more money. And just, again, the posturing that came from the White House was that you're off the hook. And the Ayatollah saw that and he acted upon it. He's been acting upon it since then. It's not just since October 7th. They have been pouring money into Hezbollah, into the Houthis, into Hamas, into insurgencies inside Syria and Iraq. And of course, the Iran regime knew that there was not going to be a consequence for any of its actions. So, of course, talking to Israel the way that we have, and I want to stop for a second and just say this. Foreign policy is not and should never be a partisan issue. When it becomes a partisan issue and our enemies know that there will be a difference and there will be daylight between different administrations, that's when that weakness causes the consequences that we're watching on the world stage. Every single crisis we're watching on the world stage that unfolded since President Biden came into office is a consequence of foreign policy weakness. Our enemies, our friends should know where they stand, regardless of who is in the White House, and there should not be a ping-ponging of our foreign policy. It has to be stable, it has to be predictable, it has to be consistent. And the way that things are going right now, look, under President Trump, love him or hate him, there was deterrence. Our enemies knew that they couldn't mess with the United States or our allies or our assets in the region. When President Biden came into the White House, it was completely different. And that is why you're seeing a lot of what you're seeing unfold right now. The other thing I want to say here is that conversation between Bibi Netanyahu and President Biden since the attack by the Islamic Republic is very dangerous. That the world should not know that President Biden told the Israelis that we will not support them in their retaliation. That could have been said in private. It shouldn't have been said at all, but it could have been kept private so that Iran's regime is not further emboldened by the fact that the United States is not going to stand with its main democratic ally in the region. It's completely a dangerous move and will have more consequences down the line.
I agree with you that it should have been, if it was going to be said, it should have been said in private. I think there's a lot of Americans who support Israel that also feel like, hey, listen, I don't know if we want to get dragged into a World War III right now. So maybe saying, hey, we're not going to directly fight your battle for you, but saying we support you in your protection, your defense, and we're going to take the shackles off and let you do what you need to do. I think that that's the important message. But no, he signaled to the world, hey, listen, we have ironclad support for Israel, but we're going to go ahead and publicize that maybe that support is wavering, especially if I need votes in Michigan. The last thing I want to ask you about is what's going on right here in the United States. Last week, we saw really disturbing videos from Dearborn, Michigan, not from Iran, but from right here in the United States of people chanting death to Israel, death to America. Just today, you've got another pro-Palestinian protest at the airport in Chicago, of course, causing people to miss their flights. And this has been going on for many months now. But, what does that say about our country? That one, we've got so many supposed Americans that are comfortable saying death to America, death to Israel. And two, maybe even more disturbing, that we've got an administration who's actively courting those people for an election.
Absolutely. And look, to the administration that's trying to court these individuals for votes, the appeasement or this slight pivot on Israel policy is not going to do it for them. They want Israel off the map, and they want every Jew dead on every corner of the world. So that's not going to appease them. They're just not going to vote in this election. And with regards to the protesters out there, this has nothing to do with the Palestinians. This has nothing to do with land. These people couldn't even point to Gaza on a map. This is absolute anti-Semitism. It's radicalization. When you look at Saudi Arabia rolling up its sleeves in this attack by the Islamic Republic against Iran and saying, we're going to defend Israel, you have to look at these protesters and members of Congress, by the way, that have become more radicalized than Saudi Arabia. Doesn't that tell you a lot? Where the world, the moderate countries of the Middle East are saying, we're not going to leave Israel alone. We're not going to allow the agenda of the Islamic Republic to go any further than this. But you have individuals here in the United States that get the comforts of American lifestyle, whether they're at universities, they're teaching at universities, they're sitting in Congress, they're sitting in Hollywood, and they have the audacity to speak about anti-Americanism, anti-Semitism, supporting the Islamic Republic. Well, I dare you to go over there and try to do what you're doing right now. I dare you to go over there and just show your hair and see what's going to happen to you. These are just, very ignorant, a lot of TikTok generation, a lot of radicalized individuals. And you know what? We need to work on setting the narrative straight. And that has to come first from the White House. We have to clear out Congress of these individuals. We have to set the record straight in terms of journalism. The mainstream media has to work hard at this because this has gone way too far. And the ramifications are already here in this country. This is not a war that is just contained to the Middle East. We are fighting an information war right here in the United States. And we're in the crux of it. It's going to far outlast that military war that we're watching in the Middle East.
Plus 10 million illegals into this country, many on the terror watch list. So if we had any, seriousness about protecting our own country, we would start by closing the border immediately. We know that's also not going to happen. We need Donald Trump, and that's all I can say to that. Lisa, thank you for taking the time today and such an important day with such important issues. I really appreciate your perspective, and we hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right, folks, from foreign policy controversies to a much lighter and less divisive topic, abortion. Just kidding. It is the issue that could be the issue that keeps Joe Biden and Democrats in power. They know it. We know it. Donald Trump knows it. And some Republicans who actually want to win something for a change know it. And they followed Trump's lead.
I want to make sure that every woman who finds herself pregnant has more choices so that she can make that choice that I made. I'll never forget the first time I got pregnant, taking that pregnancy test, looking down, and I was excited, but I'll be honest, I was afraid as well. I was nervous. I was anxious. It's natural for women to be nervous and anxious when they're pregnant. I never would ever assume that any woman had the same exact feelings I had or situation I had. We know that some women are economically in a horrible situation. They might be in an abusive relationship. They might be the victim of rape. I agree with President Trump. We must have exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of a mother. We as American people don't agree on everything all of the time. But if you look at where the population is on this, a full ban on abortion is not where the people are.
But the religious right is sounding the alarm, and in true Republican fashion, the infighting will do the work for the Democrats, who will be happy to just sit back, unified, and watch as we unravel ourselves. Here to have a friendly discussion on the topic is founder and CEO of the White Rose Resistance and host of the Seth Gruber Show, Seth Gruber. All right, Seth, so I want to have just an honest, transparent discussion about this. And before we go there, just so that you know my position on it so we can have a good groundwork. Personally, I am pro-life. I also understand, however, that this is this abortion issue, and as it pertains to restrictions and bans and states' rights, is going to be very important in November. And it is my firm belief that we lost a lot of important races in the 2022 midterms because of this issue, maybe in part due to Republicans' failure to really message it correctly. But I think it's important to just have the discussion about where we're headed, and especially now that Donald Trump Trump last week gave us a message saying that he supports the Dobbs decision, the overturn of Roe v. Wade, sending it back to the states, and that he believes that that's where it should be. So moving from that premise, I want to get your thoughts on Donald Trump and where he is on it and where you think the Republican Party should be on the issue headed into this next election.
Thank you, Tomi. I appreciate your voice and your willingness to have these conversations. I'm very grateful for Donald Trump's role in overturning Roe versus Wade. He appointed 3 Supreme Court justices, and the decision went 5-4. So it only got overturned because of all 3 Supreme Court appointments from Donald Trump. He's ripped Hillary Clinton and other radical pro-abortion advocates, and I'm grateful for that. However, I do think the pro-life movement, Tomi, needs to be very vocal in this time. I think we're on the precipice, actually, of watching the GOP begin to adopt a pro-choice platform. And this has happened in other countries. This happened in Canada. The Conservative Party in Canada now supports abortion. They now support the killing of babies in the womb, Tomi. It wasn't that way years ago. The Conservative Party in Canada used to be pro-life, and they slowly tolerated and gave ground on this most fundamental of human questions, which is, what does it mean to be a human being? Who counts as one of us? And do we all get to share these equal rights, the right to life equally, or do some people get them and others don't? If Donald Trump, the recognized leader of the Republican Party, who I have voted for, okay, begins to say that the role moving forward for the conservative movement and the Republican Party is to let each state decide and then rest the case there, that may be the beginning of the end of a pro-life platform in the Republican Party. And that's the only party we have at our disposal right now to have a political, viable opportunity to protect our preborn brothers and sisters. So I think we need to be very loud in saying this is not acceptable.
Well, the pro-life movement certainly is loud. That's not an issue that that you have at all. But I would argue that maybe this issue might not be so much a political issue as it is a personal and a religious issue. And so to me, I think the frustration for me lies that I agree with the overturn of Roe v. Wade. I believe that it should be decided by the states. I don't believe that it should be decided on a federal level. So it feels to me like the conservative movement and the pro-life movement worked so hard to get to that point to then reverse course and say, oh no, it should be a federal decision. We need a ban. And so that's, to me, that's where some of the mixed messaging is, where it's like, okay, this was a great victory for states' rights and the pro-life movement, but now it seems like that's not enough. And I know that you're going to say it's never enough because we always have to protect life. But if we look at this from a realistic position and not an idealistic one, don't you think that some of that mixed messaging has led to lost elections and lost opportunities to not only protect life, but to protect our country as a whole?
Yeah, thank you, Tomi. I have been ripping what I call woke, weak, and wimpy pro-life establishment leaders for actually many, many years. And so I understand what you're saying about the mixed messaging. That mixed messaging has not come from me and some of my friends and leaders in the pro-life movement. It's come from other organizations who did say that their primary goal as the pro-life movement was to overturn Roe versus Wade. What I'm saying, Tomi, is that this is the beginning of the pro-life movement, not the end of the pro-life movement. And here's why. If we believe that it is always wrong to intentionally kill innocent human beings, and that abortion intentionally kills an innocent human being because it is not a religious opinion that human life begins at conception. Tomi, I'll send you sometime a scan from an International Planned Parenthood Federation health booklet 9 years before Roe v. Wade in 1964, saying that they all knew that human life begins at conception and abortion kills a baby and it's dangerous to the mother's health and life. Openly admitting, Planned Parenthood, that human life begins at conception. Not a religious opinion. We know this scientifically. And so abortion kills an innocent human being. That's indisputable. Which I kind of appreciate Bill Maher's very open, honest comments recently. He's like, it's kind of murder, and it kind of is, and I'm just okay with that. And so we actually cannot choose to allow states to decide which humans get to be killed and which humans get to be saved if we believe in the science that human life begins at conception. And I'm going to risk offending you and your audience because I appreciate you and your very bold and courageous voice, Tomi. This was the same debate Stephen Douglas and Abraham Lincoln were having. for the 1860 election. Stephen Douglas was the state rights candidate. He believed each state should be able to determine whether the black man was a person or should be treated like chattel and whipped as a slave. He supported states' rights to determine whether the black human being is a person with rights that should be protected by our government. Abraham Lincoln believed what eventually became the Emancipation Proclamation, which is that no, we're not going to allow some states to murder and whip black people and other people to protect them. We have a 14th Amendment. You cannot be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. The preborn child is a person. I'm of the opinion, and many other people in the pro-life movement, that this is the beginning of the pro-life movement, and we're not going to rest until we get 38 states for a constitutional amendment to ban abortion at the federal level.
So, Seth, a few questions for you, and this could be a very long debate because I have a lot of them.
I'm
but
sure
my question for you would be, and I think I probably already know the answer, but do you believe in any exceptions to abortion bans? Are you there, or are you just an all-out ban, no exceptions?
So I don't support any exceptions metaphysically, philosophically. However, I understand why a very bold pro-life Republican politician might put in a rape or incest exception if they're trying to get the ban, but they don't have the votes at the state level to get the ban to the governor's desk. So I'm a absolutist metaphysically and philosophically and idealistically, but I am willing to be an incrementalist strategically because that's how the left has completely upended the culture. They've done it incrementally, right? They weren't going full on pedophilia in the 1980s, and now it seems that they are. They have moved incrementally in their revolution. And so I'm willing to take those wins if we don't have the votes for an abortion ban. But yes, let me be very clear to your question. I and many large percentages of the pro-life movement and evangelicalism in America and Catholicism are not happy and will not be happy and will not rest until there is a complete ban. So we might support an exception to get a bill passed because we didn't have the votes, but we won't stop and won't be satisfied with that.
Okay. I understand that you won't be happy, but you're going to be unhappy for a long time because, unfortunately, the country's not with you on this issue. And I don't think it's because people are inherently evil or they don't care about life. I think that people are just in different places and people exist on a spectrum on the issue. And I think it's a touchy one. And a lot of people, personally are very pro-life like you and would make that decision for themselves. But it's very hard for them, myself included, when government starts becoming involved in these issues. We feel like it's more of an issue for the faith and for the church and for philanthropic organizations to encourage life. But I have to ask you, there's been a lot of Republicans and someone I don't particularly like, Nikki Haley, that have come out very boldly and said, hey, listen, Republicans can lie to you all day long and say they can get a federal abortion ban, but they can't. They do not have the votes. They're not going to have the votes. The court of public opinion is not in their favor, nor are the voters. So what do you say to that argument that you can talk about what you personally want, but it's probably never going to happen in this country unless there is a dramatic and drastic shift that I think you and I both know probably isn't going to happen?
Well, we've been surprised. Our country has a very interesting history, Tommy. It's very unexpected things can happen. Here's an example to your question. A Gallup poll in 2019, Tommy, reported that only 13% of the American public, not Republicans or Democrats, 13% of the American public supported third trimester abortions. 13% of Americans think that it should be legal to kill a baby in the 9th month, in the 3rd trimester. However, under Roe versus Wade, what was the federal law, Tommy? Abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason or no reason at all. And funded by the taxpayer, by the way. And that was nearly 50 years of Roe versus Wade in all 50 states. Did that reflect the culture? Not at all. But the left is unyielding, they're uncompromising, and they push and push and push. I mean, they're kind of like whining, petulant, spoiled children. They cry and scream and whine until they get what they want. We need to be as loud and as vocal for what we want. Maybe the public isn't prepared to grant the right to life to all unborn children in all 50 states, just like the public wasn't prepared to grant personhood to the black man, and we ended up fighting a civil war over it. However, I really appreciate your honesty in this conversation, Tommy, and I want to say one more thing, because I've heard you say, and I appreciate how candid you are on this, that you believe in supporting legal abortion in some circumstances. You're supporting a limited government that doesn't over-insert itself into the lives of its citizens. However, I would like to just gently and respectfully challenge you and your listeners that it's actually your support of legal abortion that has created and is creating the rapid expansion of government and state power that you fear. And here's what I mean by that. My friend Nancy Pearcey puts it this way. She said, a rapid expansion of state power began with abortion, because in the past, the law recognized personhood as a pre-existing reality, something that followed metaphysically on simply being biologically human. So the law merely recognized this as a pre-political right. But the only way the state can legalize abortion is to deny the relevance of biology and declare that there are some biological humans who are not persons. So the state has taken on itself the authority to decide which humans qualify for the status of personhood, defined in terms of mental abilities, the capacity to think, feel, and desire. These are the arguments pro-choicers make to say that the unborn child is not a person yet. But the same reasoning is now being applied to euthanasia and assisted suicide as well. So this same worldview was applied first to babies in the womb. They said the fetus was a non-person, Tommy, right? Expendable, disposable, and fair game for research and experimentation. But today, secular bioethicists have begun to apply that same dehumanizing logic to those already born. Because according to personhood theory, your rights and dignity consist in your ability to exercise conscious, deliberate control over your lives. So if a disabled patient, for example, loses that mental control due to disease or injury, then personhood itself would be lost, even though the patient is still alive and human. What I'm saying is, when you rip the term human and person apart and you say you can be biologically human but not a person because you don't have certain cognitive abilities yet, we're putting in place the premises that justify our own enslavement for born people who fail to meet the same functional litmus test that the preborn child fails to meet in the womb. If we don't get this most basic of rights right, we will one day wake up and find that that dehumanizing worldview is knocking on our door as well.
Seth, I understand what you're saying, and you put it very eloquently, and you obviously have a lot of facts behind you, a lot of science behind you, and I understand your premise and I understand your passion for the issue. But I think where the ultra pro-life movement loses people is that, unlike murder and dehumanizing people and slavery and people not counting, there's a lot of people who look at the abortion issue and they don't look at it as a mother wanting to murder somebody. They look at it as somebody who is in a very vulnerable position that feels as though they have no way out. And instead of the church and the community rallying around that person and encouraging life, a lot of folks say, you know, the government isn't the person that's going to convince that very vulnerable person to make the pro-life decision. And therefore, the government stepping into this issue is actually not solving the problem of maintaining life. It's just, unfortunately, putting somebody in an even more vulnerable position and making it a government political decision. So for me, I don't disagree with what you're saying. As a Christian, I agree with you. I just don't think the government involvement gets you to that place, because I think there are a lot of women that are in that circumstance that they don't care that there's going to be a ban or a this ban, that ban. They're going to do it regardless. So that whole notion of safe, legal, rare, a lot of Americans are in that category. And unfortunately, for the pro-life movement, that's a reality that needs to be grappled with. So where do you, in real life terms, with where the country sits, how do you grapple with that, and how do you convince people to be personally pro-life when the public opinion just isn't there in terms of no exceptions, in terms of life being at the conception, a national ban? How do you get people there?
Yeah, well, Anthony Breitbart put it beautifully when he said politics is downstream of culture. But culture is also downstream of politics, Tommy. It's actually a two-way street. Let me give you proof of that. Roe versus Wade. Did you know the median average of annual abortions before in about 1970, 1971, Tommy, was about a 90,000 median, about 90,000 average in 1 year in America in the early 1970s. Guess what the total annual abortion rate was, Tommy, in 1975 and 1976, a couple years after Roe versus Wade? 1.6 million.
I'm sure it exploded. But I have to also ask you now that
clearly law influences behavior.
I have to ask you, though, you're right. But Seth, let's look at the numbers, because since the overturn of Roe v. Wade, which I agree with, abortions have also gone up. So that would signal to me that maybe all of this is not working in the way the pro-life movement intended.
Well, I can't speak for the entire pro-life movement. I can speak for what I believe is the correct position in my organization, which is like, we're just getting started. And I really don't care if my opinion and what we're pushing for does not mirror public opinion right now. I think we actually have to start functioning in the same strategical manner that the left always has.
But
which
how do you do that when the whole Republican Party is
continue.
not? When the whole Republican Party is not with you, when the leader of our party is not with you? I want to take your personal passions aside, and I want to look at this again. I want to get back to, if we lose on this issue, and we lose the White House, and we lose Republican ballots up and down in every which direction, how do we, knowing that we're going to lose everything largely because of this issue, how do we advance any other societal good that the conservative Republican movement wants to advance, like securing our border, like fixing our economy? How do we get there if we keep losing elections? I know your personal opinion, but your personal opinion is going to lead to the Republican Party losing and not being able to do a damn thing, Seth. Let's be honest.
So you and me are both Christians, Tomi, and so I believe that God intervenes in the affairs of men. And I believe that if we
but I have to get away from the idealistic thing. But let's just be honest, Seth. You and I both know that if Republicans came and they had the same opinion as you, for no exceptions and a federal abortion ban in totality, you know that any Republican that takes that stance is going to lose their election pretty much in any place in this country. So I don't think, and I love what you're saying about God intervening, but let's be honest. God did intervene in the 2022 midterms. I don't think God's going to intervene in 200 days. If Republicans run on this issue, where you stand on it, they will lose. Do you agree or disagree?
I'm not sure. It looks like they could lose, but I don't know how it will all pan out. I do know this. A conservative movement that does not prioritize the total and complete abolition of abortion as its highest political priority will one day wake up and find that there is nothing left to conserve. And those who murder the unborn cannot be trusted to govern the born. And the longer we've tolerated the destruction, mutilation, and murder of the preborn in America, the sooner we found that they're never satisfied simply coming after the unborn. They're throwing pro-life sidewalk counselors in prison. They're trying to remove the medical licenses of pro-life OBGYNs who share what Fauci calls abortion, quote, misinformation. They never stop at the unborn. Now it's parents speaking at school board meetings who are domestic terrorists. I'm actually suggesting that we be as unyielding and uncompromising in protecting the preborn as the Democrat Party is in their unyielding, uncompromising position in murdering the unborn. Good luck getting elected as a Democrat if you're slightly pro-life. Good luck getting the nomination for president from the Democrat Party if you're slightly pro-life.
But I understand. I understand that the left is radical on the issue.
We're willing to vote for pro-abortion, pro-choice Republicans, even if they just want to kill rape, incest babies, or first trimester babies. That toleration of evil has led to more and more broad acceptance in the conservative movement in the GOP. What we tolerate, we eventually accept. What we accept, we eventually start celebrating. And what we celebrate, we eventually end up participating in. And unfortunately, Kari Lake and Donald Trump are actually great examples of that rule. We need to start putting a line in the sand and having some uncompromising positions. I simply don't think we can trade the lives of innocent human beings to win elections.
Well, I respect your opinion. I disagree with you on it because I believe in order to do anything, you have to first win an election. And that goes for everything that we want to do in this country when it comes to illegal immigration, when it comes to election integrity, when it comes to our economy, when it comes to our foreign policy. I think you have to win to be able to do anything. And if we had not won in 2016, there would have never been the overturn of Roe v. Wade. So I'm of the opinion that you have to have victories and you have to be able to win something in order to win big in other places and in order to change public opinion and move it closer to a pro-life agenda. But that's
Which is why I support incremental victories.
Okay. Well, maybe we can.
And I'm willing to take incremental wins with you to get to the total goal. But I do think that pro-life evangelical voters need to start being very loud.
Here's my last question
and getting
for you.
new candidates.
This is my last question
Go
for
ahead.
you. Speaking of new questions, so would this issue and Donald Trump's position on this issue mean that you're not going to be voting for Donald Trump in November?
It's something that I have seriously been praying about, because I'm not sure that we can reform the Republican Party if we continue to tolerate and vote for pro-choice candidates. However, I'm also a realist, and I'm also an incrementalist when I need to be.
Are you a realist?
Yes, I am. But so, for example, here's one example, Tommy. I want a new FDA commissioner. They're shipping the abortion pill via snail mail. And teenagers and everyone can get the abortion pill, even where states are illegal. Fathers are finding their teenage daughters dead on the bathroom floor, hemorrhaging out because she had an ectopic pregnancy, and you don't have to visit a physician anymore, thanks to Biden and this administration. Now you get the abortion pill, which is killing over 50% of babies in America every year, to your mailbox, delivered to your home. I would love an incremental victory if Trump's reelected of firing the FDA commissioner, getting a new one, and making the abortion pill illegal, which is what pro-choicers used to support. Because of how dangerous it is for women.
I can agree with you on that one. But first, Seth, you got to win an election. And if the pro-life movement will not vote for Donald Trump because they're upset about this particular issue, we will lose the election. Biden or Kamala or Gavin Newsom will be your president. And then I shudder to think what's going to happen in terms of this issue. I wish we could debate this all day long, because I've got more questions for you, but I appreciate the conversation. It's a conversation that needs to be had. There is, obviously a spectrum of opinions on the issue, and it's important to dissect those. And I really appreciate your time and coming on and having the discussion with me. And I welcome you back anytime, because it's not going away anytime soon.
Thanks for the opportunity, Tommy.
Thanks, Seth. All right. The left assured us Donald Trump would usher us into World War III, and despite the fact that Joe Biden is literally doing just that, the left still tries to assure us Donald Trump would usher us into World War III. I have some final thoughts presented by American Financial.
Tomi Lahren is Fearless is presented by American Financing. American Financing has helped thousands of customers save real money and put themselves into a better financial position. Call today and see what they can do for you. 866-890-8585 or visit AmericanFinancing.net.
So here we are on the cusp of World War III, with our enemies emboldened and making moves, our own border open, and our president who can't tackle the big boy stairs, let alone any of the many threats we are facing. Over the course of the last several months, Joe Biden and his colleagues like Chucky Schumer and the Hamas caucus have actively undermined Israel, all to appease the terror sympathizers on college campuses and the Palestinian activists in the need-to-win state of Michigan. Democrats only care about winning, not what's right, not what's fitting, not what's proper, just whatever needed to win elections, even if the country and the world burns down for it. And after this latest unprecedented act of aggression by Biden's sugar baby nation, Iran, Joe Biden's PR team has sent out the Gen Z influencers to convince other Gen Z morons that Joe Biden is doing a great job. These little twerps are bought and paid for, but apparently they share a brain and a one sheet of talking points. So cute. But the rest of us who exist outside of TikTok know that the world under Joe is on fire. The kind of fire Joe himself warned would happen under Donald Trump. Flashback.
The world has changed because of what Trump has done. And the American people, including independents and some Republicans, know how bad he is, know how much he's misrepresented, know how he's getting close to getting us in a war. I said, as the walls close in on this man, I'm worried he's going to get us to war in Iran. Unfortunately, I may have been right. The fact of the matter is there's a lot at stake in this election.
Well, that aged like milk, and Joe Biden, not well. But despite the obvious, the leftists and their allies in the media are still trying to convince us that Donald Trump is the threat and the danger, the man who oversaw the collapse of ISIS and started no new wars. The world was afraid of Trump, and we should all like it that way. Maybe our enemies thought he was crazy, but who cares? It worked. Nobody effed with us when Trump was our president, and as bad as things are now, we have a golden opportunity to return to that. To mean tweets and world peace, we need Donald Trump. Those are my final thoughts from Nashville. God bless and take care.